All right, folks. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to the next installment of our 8 stations model. This is a little bit like a crime serial. So there was a question from Sheikh Fakhr who said, please explain the words moral and amoral in the shift of attention from significance to meaning. So to do a reasonable job of this, folks, I think I'd like to go back to the model itself. So you remember yesterday we indicated that this station of the significant is where we spend most of our adult life. And it's really about being the good citizen. It's about being the custodian, the one who sits at the head of the table and keeps order. The project is to keep balance. And it's specifically a concern with moral order. And that's in a sense where the conformity of the form of the adolescence differs from the conformity of the adult, because the adult is trying to basically maintain a just system. They're trying to maintain balance. Now, please don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not suggesting that we should go and burn down the city. But the key issue that sits behind the moral idea is this idea that if everybody does their duty, then the system works. And at one level, this is perfectly true. There's a famous quote of an early Afrikaner thinker called Jan Brandt, who said, "As almal net sy plig, alles sal regkom as almal net sy plig doen." And that means everything will come right if everybody just does their duty. And if you live in a clearly dysfunctional society like South Africa, this is obvious. I mean, and if you contrast it like what I've been seeing over the shoulder of my dear wife Anna in Sweden, people try and be correct and they try and be moral, and that's why the society works. It actually needs very little external policing because the citizen polices themselves. Now, I hope I'm not speaking too much out of house and home here. But what was very interesting regarding Anna's kind of comments, and in fact, a lot of the people that have seen the work that we do professionally in Sweden, is that they seem to suggest that there's not a lot of space for our organizational work, of my business's organizational work, because that work is kind of moral in character. It's about being the just leader. In fact, the care and growth leadership model fits squarely in the space of the person who's trying to do the right thing and live up to their responsibilities as a leader of people. The Swedes get this right, but there seems to be an incredible spiritual paucity in Sweden. And it's almost as if the world is so functional that actually the deepest requirements of our heart, which is to really kind of come to terms with existence itself, that doesn't get satisfied. So another way of explaining this is to say we actually have two engagements with the other. We have an engagement with a social other, and then we have an engagement with the totality of the other. The distinction between the two, from the point of view of our engagement with the totality of the other, that distinction is somewhat false, because actually the social other is contained within the totality of the other. The totality of the other is what we could call Allah's face. It is the thing that he refers to when he says, wherever you turn is the face of Allah. It's everything that is not you that gets presented to you in the moment that you're in, the totality of that. Now, it is clear that that total thing is a very big thing, and it's potentially a very scary thing. And he has scripted us in such a way that we can only reproduce ourselves by cooperating against that thing. You see, so we have to build the walls of the city to keep the wilderness at bay. We have to make a fire and huddle around the fire to keep the hyenas at bay. We have to cooperate with others because the great out there is our enemy and it's not our friend. So our moral capacity is about our ability to cooperate with other people, to subordinate our needs for what's right for the group. But inside us, there's a desire, there's a need to actually befriend this wild thing outside the city walls and not to keep on collaborating with my brothers against it. In other words, when you're in the age of the significant, you are absolutely invested in the city. You are a significant person in the city, in the world of people. You're maintaining the city walls. There comes a point in your life where you are getting really curious about what's outside the walls. What's your relationship with all of that about? Not just your relationship with people. Because however you look at it, unfortunately, no matter how significant a person you are, you will find that being a person among people is settling for something rather second best. You are far more than just a person among people. The highest parts of you aren't when you're dealing with other people in the marketplace or even in the charitable organization. The highest place is in sajda, in the middle of the night, when the rest of them have gone to sleep. And you can hear the stars. And you can go out into the roof of your house and you can hear a dog barking in the distance and a single aircraft going across the velvet of the night sky. And you know that he is behind that veil, and you know that he is immensely proximate to you. That is what we really want. It is that experience that we want. In the heart, that knowledge. And that experience is only visited on you when you withdraw from the crowd. It is in the middle of the night. It is in the khalwa. It is on the mountain. It is in the retreat. It is when it is in the sajda. In sajda, you're not having a conversation. You're quiet. That's where real meaning lies. But to engage that world, you've got to step out of the world of men. You've got to step out of the contract of collaborating with them to keep the hyenas at bay. Because actually what you're trying to do is you're trying to befriend the world of the hyenas. You're trying to befriend the vastness out there beyond the light of the fire. So this is what the story of Sheikh al-Ghazali demonstrates, you see, because he was clearly a man of the city. Baghdad, top alim, the top alim of his generation. You know, people came from across the Muslim world, thousands of kilometers, to sit at his feet and hear him expound. And he said, but this doesn't satisfy my heart. I want to know my Rabb. My Rabb isn't in Baghdad. My Rabb is out in the wilderness. And that's what he did. He disappeared for a decade and he wandered the wilderness. From the people who were dependent on his legal knowledge. This was an absolute reneging of a contract. We've honored you. We've put you in charge. You can't just run away and go and find yourself in the desert. So it was, in a sense, an amoral act. It was no longer because morality is about agreeing with your neighbor, being a good neighbor to your neighbor, being part of the social collaboration. Whereas there's a part of you which is very intolerant of this collaboration because the price is too high, you see. Because the price means that at some level, you secretly have to hold on to a program that the great out there is your enemy and it is hostile, is your enemy, and it's based in scarcity. because we have to collaborate against it. So you have to renege on the social contract to discover that the great out there is not your enemy, and you don't need to collaborate against it, because it actually has your best interest at heart, has a living relationship with you, and is both your benefactor and your ally. So that's what the search for meaning, the desire for meaning actually is. In the station of the significant, towards the end of it, you are really no longer that concerned with outward endeavor and making the world, the fixing of the walls of the city. You are getting far more involved in quietness, in going inward. In the highest points are those such, I can't remember who said this, but it is a beautiful quote. One of the shuyuchs said, when Malik al-Maut comes through the door one day, it'll occur to you that night, that one sajda under the stairs in the middle of the night, that was the highest moment of your life. We all seek that. Truly, we all want that for ourselves. We want a sense of meaning which is beyond the accolade of others. We want not to be companionable just with our neighbor. We want to become companionable with the stars. And to do that, we've got to get quiet. To do that, we've got to go inward. And in fact, one can almost describe this, from this point forward, there's an inversion of aspiration. Prior to this point, all of your attention has been increasingly dedicated to the outward, to its extremity in the state of separation, and then you were trying to get some balance as a mature adult, and then you started to discover, no, I want more. And then you started to get quiet, you started to pull in, until you were playing this drum of the inward so loud, as we said, every one of these stations has got two drums. It's got a conservative drum and a progressive drum. You played the progressive drum of the inward so loud that you got pitched into a new station, the station of meaning. Now, you can say the station of the significant is the station of the parent. The parent is the Gestapo who still has a keen interest in the maintenance of good order. And so it's very important that the kids go to bed at night at the right time, and they don't have too much sugar, and they kind of do their homework, and they're all very crisp. Very laudable, by the way. I'm not knocking this at all. But now, being a grandparent, I discover actually great delight in the seditious role that a grandparent has. You can't trust grandparents, you see, because when my granddaughter Sophia comes here, the first thing she does, I've deliberately put the sweet, the candy, you would call it in American, the candy bowl where she can get to it. So the first thing she does when she comes to visit me in the morning is she goes to the candy bowl, and I give her whatever she likes, because this kid getting charged up on sugar isn't my problem. It's her parents' problem. Yeah. So grandparents are there to give them sugar and drive them nuts, and then parents are there to have to deal with that problem. You see, that's why you can't trust grandparents. You see, they're really very seditious people. They really undermine good order. They have a terrible dress sense. They have egg on their shirt, and they undermine the discipline of the children. They are bad people. Ask me, I am one. I can tell you this without any fear of contradiction. As we said, any station is pinned between two extremes. So the apex of this first real step into the inward is a desire for meaning. You want something more substantial than what you experience as the tinsel and the superficiality of the social contract. You want something more. Your heart wants the talk, wants the stars. It wants something wild and fitrik. This conservative drum of, and so in the beginning of the state, you beat this drum of separation, quite loudly. And what is meant by separation in this sense is that you are trying to distantiate yourself from these people of good order, like your children who now are parents, who try and keep the world working. That you're no longer that interested in this whole prospect. You see it as somewhat silly and superficial. So you distantiate yourself, you separate yourself from good order and from the desire for good order. Over a period of time, you start playing this progressive drum of gatheredness more and more. So gatheredness, remember we said gatheredness is about the closeness. It's about it's about also really giving attention to where this side of perception. We said gatheredness is the place where your perception funnels into. So it has these two significances. It's you're interested in what's going on over here, where your perception is funneling into. You're also interested in the gathered state, in intimacy, rather than in separation and grandeur. You want intimacy and closeness, which is why it's so fantastic for me to have my granddaughter with me. And this lockdown has been the most amazing experience because, I can basically sit and while away hours with her every day. It's fantastic. It's, I'd much rather be doing that than being this very significant and important consultant, kind of giving sage advice to these professionals who are trying to run big corporations. What a silly thing to do. I mean, a 5-minute conversation with Sophia is far more interesting than 2 hours sitting in somebody else's board meeting. And so I'd far rather have that, the sense of gatheredness, the sense of kind of being a little bit easy on the distinctions, easy on the good order, and easy on separation. As we go through the state, this pursuit of gatheredness, this sitting with yourself, this quietness, this intimacy, starts to create the condition where there's a very significant flip. And it's a flip of in a sense, a complete inversion of how your attention operates. And we will get to that tomorrow, folks. So just very, very quickly to summarize the status of the significant of the adult has within it a desire to maintain good order, balancing the requirements of the self and the other, the inward and the outward. Over a period of time, it gets experienced to be both a meaningless and an exhausting prospect. So you start to play this drum of the inward more and more loudly until you end up, I beg your pardon. You end up in the oh dear, you end up in this station of meaning. The station of meaning starts off with you can call it the kind of the sort of rebelliousness of the midlife crisis, kind of wanting to distantiate yourself from people, wanting you will pass up 4 kind of gala dinners for 1 hour with your grandchild. Thank you very much. Any questions, folks? Fakhrizab, why or and not and? What are you referring to? Okay, so from the point of view, so when you truly have an engagement with the totality of the other, you see the social other as a subset. So in other words, you don't see them as separate. Then it's an all. So when you're looking at the world from the point of view of meaning, nothing surprises you, and everything seems to kind of fit, is in a place somewhere. From the person with the station of meaning, the social other is contained within the totality of the other, particularly as you go further and further into the station. From the point of view of the person who is still maintaining good order, from the kind of the adult who's the social other and the totality of the other are indeed opposites. A very good way of exploring this is disgust. So one of the first things that we use, tools we use to educate's the wrong word, but socialize the young into becoming good citizens is to teach them the disgust which is peculiar to our society. At some point, what you would have found disgusting before, you no longer find that disgusting. You can just live with it. So the things of nature are no longer that upsetting. Yeah. Does this transition also mean a revision of the individual identity? In other words, nationalism versus citizen of the world, or similar ideas in the realm of faith? Ghulam Kafil Sahab, I think that is absolutely correct. You have a far looser sense of who you are as you move into the station. And so you become, in a sense, a more tolerant person. You do experience yourself as being a human being rather than just a person of a particular national background. And you also, you have a more open-minded sort of approach to your own faith and to matters of faith, less judgmental. I think that's absolutely correct. I think that is what happens. So when you're being particularly judgmental, then you are still very much in this area of the significant, because you still, it horrifies you that anybody could want to undermine good order. Whereas in the realm of meaning, you kind of, the focus on that is softer. Shabnam, so as we progress through the model, I think that generally we end up spending more and more time in each epoch. So I think very few people in our current society, particularly in a-religious societies, end up here, unless they do. Maybe they end up in a dysfunctional way. They kind of get Alzheimer's or something. In other words, they end up in either inward or gatheredness. This period of the significant can be anything, can end any time from 40 to 60, or even 65. Depending on how severe your midlife crisis was and what kind of catastrophes you've had to deal with in your life. My comment on the recent rise of nationalism and populism. So I think what's happened is that the young, who are still trying to be very good citizens and make the world work, have been very disturbed by recent developments, particularly in countries that are sort of prone to immigration. But even in places like India, where there's been this rise of chauvinism, and I think it's basically been a backlash to feeling threatened and by younger people feeling threatened by this sort of this far too open-ended world that the left had created. And so, in a sense, it's people in this epoch, this epoch of the significant, running back into the cage because they're frightened. I think it's inevitable. Yeah. So although somebody like Donald Trump is clearly a man beyond his 70s, I think he still actually is either one, he still oscillates between these two ways of being. Sometimes I'm convinced the guy's a stuck adolescent, and sometimes he operates like in this sense, which is why he articulates a very narrow kind of identity politics. All identity politics will be either people, identity politics speaks of people being either in the station of separation or the significant. I don't think that people of meaning would have much interest in identity politics at all, actually, because they're trying to go beyond identity. All right, folks. Is there any reason why this model moves clockwise? Well, maybe you're looking at it from the other side. Maybe it's like a mirror thing. I thought it moves anti-clockwise because I thought it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Clockwise would be this way around. But no, I feel I have never even thought of that. Maybe if I thought in Arabic, it would be the other way around because you write from right to left in Arabic. I don't know. Anti-clockwise, very clever. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, folks. As always, I've had great fun, and thank you for entertaining me and giving me the opportunity to go through this model, and also at a more measured pace, because it is helping me to be a far more crisp in my own thinking. We'll see each other tomorrow again. So just to give you a heads up, I am going to set. So there's Friday, we're going to do inward, and Saturday, we're going to do gathered. I beg your pardon. I'm going to make one last invitation for Sunday, which is where I think I should try and integrate the intent model with the attention model so you can see how these things fly in parallel. I didn't do I didn't do a very good job of that initially. Thank you very much, folks. All the best. Have a good evening. Assalamu alaikum.